Valentina says that she missed her school, her friends, and her grandparents, writing, "I don't feel good in this place." Mr. Vice President, she's 7 years old.
Sure.
Any of your kids could be 7 years old.
Sure.
What would you tell Valentina?
Well, first of all, this is a very heartbreaking letter, and I don't know enough about Valentina's circumstances, but we want Valentina to have a good life. And one of the reasons why we've pursued the immigration policies that we've had is that if you saw under the last administration, there were tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of girls like Valentina who were brought into the country. Some of them were sex trafficked. Some of them were living in the shadows. Some of them were unable to access basic things like food and medicine. Now, here's the problem. Anytime you have, let's say, you deport a person, and everybody agrees this person should be deported. Let's say it's a violent criminal with convictions, but sometimes that person is going to have family. And the difficulty with any immigration enforcement policy is that you're going to have cases where you just have heartbreaking circumstances like that. What happens to an innocent child who did nothing wrong, but their parents being deported? Sometimes, even though it's not always easy, the right answer is going to be to ensure that that child can go back to their family in the country of origin. Maybe not always, but certainly sometimes. And what we're trying to do is just handle this stuff case by case and do as good as we can by everybody, including the American people who really suffered when we had this wide open border in the last administration.
Joining us now, Noticiero NMS Univision reporter Lydia Terraza. She's been following the situation at Dili and has spoken with several children detained there. Lydia, let's first talk about what the vice president said there. I guess there's a implication here, if I heard it right, that if a 7-year-old is in detention, it's because a family member is in some way a criminal. But yet this administration sees anybody who is undocumented as a criminal. There's a difference between the worst of the worst and people who have committed crimes like assault and robbing banks. I'm not sure what he meant here. What did you take from that interview?
Mika, good morning. I want to make it very clear that the Dili Immigration Processing Center is a family detention center. Individuals with any sort of criminal background are not allowed to be detained in Dili. If a parent in any of these families is even suspected of having a criminal background, they will be separated from their family and taken to a different detention center. Because this is a family immigration processing center where there are children, where a third of the detainees are children, people with criminal backgrounds are simply not allowed. And Valentina is just one of several cases, and specifically for me, where I have received letters from children detailing their time inside of this processing center.
So how long, we're going to get to some specific children who you have heard from, but how long are these kids staying in detention? What are the rules? And what do you know about how many children are in Dili alone?
In the last few months especially, there has been prolonged detention of children, which is a violation of a federal agreement, the Flores Settlement Agreement, which states that migrant children are not to be detained in these facilities for more than 20 days. There have been upwards of 6,000 kids during this administration who have been detained. And we know that in recent months, many of these children have been detained for more than 60 days.